You know, the learner, when we usually talk about a successful workday, there's this like deeply ingrained expectation of physical proof.
Oh, absolutely. Like sweat and exhaustion.
Right. We picture someone spending 8 hours hauling bricks, chopping wood, or I don't know, just running frantically between back-to-back meetings. Your muscles ache. Your brain is just totally fried.
And your internal monologue basically points to all that exhaustion and says, there it is. I earned my keep today.
Exactly. I suffered, therefore I am valuable.
It's the ultimate tangible metric for productivity, really. Sweat equals value. It's clean, it's easy to understand, and I mean, we've been conditioned for generations to trust it.
But then you step into the world of digital business, right? The
Mm.
modern creator economy. And suddenly that metric just completely breaks down.
Yeah, it falls apart entirely.
We're looking at a landscape of wealth creation that operates on like a totally different set of physics. And yet so many of us are still running around trying to sweat.
Trying to force that old model to work.
Exactly. So today we're going to unpack a really fascinating stack of sources to figure out, why we do this and how to actually stop.
Mm.
We're looking at excerpts from the Architect's Notebook, a curriculum called the Monday Mindshift, and this really eye-opening 20-minute masterclass expansion.
Yeah, and the overarching mission of these sources is to deconstruct a massive paradigm shift. We're moving from a punishing, physical effort-based hustle culture into a state of systems-driven harmony.
Systems-driven harmony. That's
It's
who's...
a big shift. The texts boldly refer to this destination as a soft life.
Okay, wait, I need to hit pause right there and just play devil's advocate for a second. Because the moment you say soft life, alarm bells go off for a lot of hardworking people.
Oh, for sure. People immediately get defensive.
Right. Like if you tell people they don't need to sweat or grind,
Yeah.
aren't you just breeding complacency? How is a soft life not just a fancy rebrand for laziness or giving up on your ambitions?
Well, that is the exact reaction most people have, and the sources tackle it head on. The text explicitly argues that a soft life is absolutely not a life without ambition.
Okay.
And it is certainly not apathy. Laziness is, doing nothing and expecting a reward. What these sources are describing is achieving quiet sovereignty by upgrading your mental operating system.
Upgrading the OS, right.
Exactly. It's about firing a scarcity-driven mindset and stepping into the role of a strategist. The ambition is actually higher, but the execution shifts from the noise of sheer physical hustle to the quiet precision of, like, an architectural blueprint.
Wow. Okay, so it's not about doing less. It's about doing the right things with infinitely more leverage.
Yes, precisely.
But to understand how we actually get there, we first had to, diagnose the specific mental block, keeping us walled off from that leverage.
Yeah.
And the sources pinpoint a concept they call the internal CFO.
Right. So think of the internal CFO as the chief financial officer living inside your own head.
Just constantly crunching the numbers on your effort.
Exactly. And according to the text, for most workers today, this internal regulator is infected with a manual labor virus.
The manual labor virus. That sounds like a factory-era holdover.
It's entirely a factory-era holdover. It's the cellular belief we opened with. If you aren't physically exhausted, if you aren't stressed and stretched to your absolute breaking point, you aren't actually earning anything.
Man, that hits close to home.
We are running an industrial revolution script in a digital-first world.
And this internal CFO is basically walking around with a clipboard in your brain, constantly auditing your stress
You're
levels.
checking to make sure you're suffering enough.
Right. If it's running on a script of scarcity, it actively sabotages your digital business. If things are going too smoothly, the CFO sounds the alarm. It says, wait, we aren't suffering today. We must be failing.
Because it fundamentally believes that wealth requires suffering. It demands a sacrifice.
I see this all the time. People build these incredible digital tools, software that automates their workflow, but their brains still demand physical exhaustion to feel worthy.
Yeah, they literally can't sit still.
It's like owning a high-tech electric vehicle, an incredibly efficient machine, but you still think you have to get out and push it from behind for the engine to actually work.
Oh, that is such a perfect analogy.
Right. You're sweating, your hands are blistered, you're exhausted, and you're looking at the car thinking, wow, I'm really driving now. Meanwhile, the car is designed to do all the work for you. You just have to sit in the seat and steer.
The absurdity of getting out to push an electric car really captures the manual labor virus perfectly, and the reason we do it is entirely based on societal conditioning.
Hustle culture.
Exactly. Hustle culture has spent decades convincing us that the harder you push the car, the more noble you are. But the sources are making a very sharp demand here, and that is that you have to fire that version of yourself.
You have to fire the CFO.
You must fire the CFO that conflates suffering with progress.
Okay, but I mean, firing a deeply ingrained psychological habit is way easier said than done. How do we actually catch this internal CFO in the act before we push ourselves into total burnout? We need some sort of diagnostic tool.
And thankfully, the sources provide one. They introduce a framework called the sovereign audit.
The sovereign audit. Now,
Yeah, and to know when to run this audit, the text pinpoints a universal emotional trigger known as the Sunday pit.
oh man, the Sunday pit. I don't even need to read the definition to know exactly what that feels like.
Right, we've all been there.
It's 4:00 p.m. on a Sunday, the weekend is evaporating, and this creeping heavy dread just starts pooling in your stomach about the week ahead. You start checking your email even though you don't have to, just to like brace yourself.
That visceral creeping dread is the exact alarm bell. The sources say the moment you feel the Sunday pit settling in, you have to hit pause and run the sovereign audit.
Okay, and how do we do that?
You ask yourself one clinical question. Is this a real, tangible problem I am facing right now, or is my internal CFO just addicted to the grind?
Wow, that distinction changes everything. Is this a real problem? Because if I'm sitting on my couch on a Sunday afternoon, completely safe, there is no immediate fire to put out.
None at all.
So the dread isn't coming from a real threat. It's coming from an addiction to the feeling of being overwhelmed.
Exactly. And to really break down the mechanics of how the CFO operates, the 20-minute masterclass expansion shares a fantastic, really grounded story.
So the electrician story, right?
Yes. The author spent 20 years working as an electrician before moving into digital business. They compare two very different experiences on the job site.
Well, I through it.
So in the first scenario, they worked incredibly hard. They were running back and forth to the truck, sweating, getting tangled in wires, and physically exhausted at the end of the day.
Let me guess, the internal CFO loved that day.
Oh, absolutely adored it because it felt highly productive. But why was it so hard? Because the job was poorly planned. It was chaotic.
Right?
They were compensating for a lack of architecture with sheer physical effort.
They were pushing the electric car.
Precisely. Now, they contrast that with the second scenario, a job where they took the time to create a perfect, solid blueprint before picking up a single tool.
A completely different approach.
The work was smooth, methodical, and calm. There was no panic, no running for forgotten parts, and no crushing exhaustion at the end of the day. The output was vastly superior, but it didn't feel as hard.
And because it didn't feel hard, the scarcity CFO probably tried to convince them they were being lazy or slacking off.
Which is such a trap.
It raises such a critical question for anyone listening. Are we purposefully manufacturing our own stress just to feel productive?
It's a tough question to face.
Do we actively throw away the blueprint so we can run around and sweat, simply because our internal programming only validates us when we're bleeding?
The text would argue that we do this constantly. We create artificial urgency just to satisfy the CFO.
Catching that addiction is definitely the hardest part of this shift. I mean, we've been taught to view stress as a badge of honor. We brag about how full our calendars are or how many unread emails we have.
The busier, the better, right?
Yeah, but this curriculum flips the script completely. It says your stress isn't a badge of honor. It's just a symptom of a missing blueprint.
So true. So once you've run the sovereign audit and caught this scarcity CFO trying to make you sweat unnecessarily, what do you replace it with? You can't just fire the regulator and have a vacuum in your head.
Right. If I'm not supposed to govern my work ethic with hustle and panic, what exactly is supposed to drive me?
You replace the hustle with systems. The sources introduce a new mental operating system called the Chill Star Creed.
The Chill Star Creed. Okay.
Right.
That sounds very relaxed.
And the central pillar of this creed is shifting into a state they call quiet mode.
Quiet mode in a business context. That sounds like putting your smartphone on Do Not Disturb and just ignoring your clients for a week.
I know, it sounds passive, but it's actually highly structural. Quiet mode is the practical application of harmony. This is where we get into the actual mechanics of automation. But the sources are meticulous about defining this. Automation isn't just a tech stack. It's not just buying a software subscription and walking away.
It's deeper than that.
It is a fundamental mindset shift defined by one powerful axiom. I don't have to be present for value to be created.
Okay, I want to unpack the mechanics of that
Mm.
because it goes completely against the manual labor virus.
Yeah.
I don't have to be present for value to be created.
It's a huge mental hurdle.
Usually when we think of automation, we view it through the lens of hustle. We think of it as a way to do more manual work at a faster speed.
Right, like scaling the hustle.
Exactly, like turning up the dial on a treadmill.
Yeah.
We're still running, we're just using a machine to run faster
Mm.
and produce more widgets per hour.
We use the technology to become a more efficient engine.
But these sources are arguing that automation isn't a treadmill at all. Automation is a hammock.
A hammock. I like that.
It's about decoupling your physical presence, like your sweat, your hours logged from your financial output.
And to make that hammock functional, the sources provide the literal blueprint for what they call the sanctuary.
The sanctuary.
Yes. The text details specific digital tools and structures used to automate income. For instance, they discuss the Legacy Builder program, which spans from $100 to $1,400 levels, and the Chillstar blueprint, which is built around 100% commissions.
Okay, let's break down the how of that, because when people hear things like 100% commissions or $1,400 automated levels, it can sound like, internet marketing jargon.
And it can sound a bit opaque, yeah.
So how does this digital grid actually replace physical presence?
Well, it comes down to the nature of digital assets versus physical labor. In a manual labor model, if you want to sell an hour of your time, you have to physically be there.
Right.
If you want to sell 2 hours, you have to be there for 2 hours. Your income is inherently capped by your stamina.
You're the engine burning fuel.
Exactly. But when the sources talk about these automated blueprints, they are talking about building evergreen digital systems. You create a structure, say a digital product or an automated sales funnel, once.
Just the one time.
Right, and the marginal cost of duplicating and delivering a digital asset is basically zero.
Meaning it takes the exact same amount of physical effort from you to deliver the product to one person as it does to 10,000 people.
Precisely. The system handles the transaction, the fulfillment, and the delivery automatically.
Wow.
That's how a 100% commission model functions in this context. You own the digital real estate. You aren't splitting profits with a middleman because the automated grid is the middleman.
It's doing the heavy lifting.
You build the infrastructure, the $100 entry points up to the $1,400 comprehensive programs, and the system runs the logic. The architectural goal of this grid is to bear the weight of your financial needs.
So the system takes the load.
Yes, and when the grid holds the weight, your mind can finally step into that state of rest the author calls the sanctuary.
The sanctuary. It sounds incredibly peaceful. But, I can also imagine that sitting in the sanctuary while the digital grid does the heavy lifting would initially send your old scarcity CFO into an absolute tailspin.
Oh, the guilt would be immense at first, because in the sanctuary, you aren't sweating. You aren't proving your worth through exhaustion.
The CFO would be screaming at you.
And that is exactly why the text doesn't just leave you with high-level theory. It demands you execute a script flip through immediate daily action steps to rewire your brain to tolerate ease.
Okay, so let's bring this down to ground level for a minute. What does this mean for the learner tomorrow morning? How do we start building this grid and firing the CFO this week?
The very first actionable step the sources mandate is highly specific and, honestly, very psychological. Stop checking your analytics with stress.
Oh man, that is a direct hit. The constant refreshing of the dashboard, the bank account, the email inbox.
We all do it.
We do it looking for a dopamine hit or, conversely, looking for a panic trigger.
Exactly. When you check your analytics with a knot in your stomach, you are literally feeding the scarcity CFO. You are actively searching for a fire to put out so you can justify working harder.
You're looking for an excuse to sweat.
The text says you have to cut that feedback loop immediately. Instead, they recommend utilizing tools like their Monday Mindshift playlist to recalibrate your focus away from panic and towards strategy.
Okay, so you stop looking for emergencies. What's the active step then?
The mandate for the week is to replace just one manual task with a system. You don't have to build the entire digital empire by Friday.
Start small.
Right. Just take one thing you do repetitively, automate it, and step back. Prove to your nervous system that the grid can hold the weight without your hands on it.
And to support that behavioral change, the curriculum gives you the mental architecture to hold it all together. They provide 3 specific affirmations.
But they don't even call them affirmations, do they?
No. What I find fascinating is that they elevate them to business requirements. It's not just a nice fluffy thought you say in the mirror. It is a mandatory operational requirement for your new digital business.
Let's walk through them because they perfectly summarize the mechanics of the soft life. Requirement number 1, my systems are more reliable than my stress.
That ties right back to the electrician story. A solid, pre-planned blueprint will always produce a better outcome than chaotic, panicked hustle. Stress is just a terrible operational strategy.
It really is. Requirement number 2, I am an architect, not an engine.
Okay, I want to highlight the tension in that metaphor because it's brilliant. If you think about it, an engine is a mechanical part and an architect is a human being. They aren't in the same category.
Right, vastly different.
But that's the whole point. The manual labor virus reduces us to mechanical components. An engine's sole purpose is to combust. It burns fuel to create forward motion, and it has to keep burning until it eventually runs out of gas or breaks down.
It has no other setting.
Right. If the engine stops, the whole operation stops.
So the hustle mindset literally turns you into the combustion engine of your own life.
But an architect operates in a completely different reality. An architect does heavy lifting up front in the planning phase, drawing the blueprints, calculating the load-bearing walls.
Setting up the structure.
But once that structure is built, it stands on its own. The architect doesn't have to physically stand there holding up the ceiling.
That would be absurd.
Right. The structure becomes a place you can inhabit. You transition from being the mechanism that burns out to the creator of a space that provides shelter.
You step out from under the hood of the car and you walk over to the drafting table. That is the essence of sovereignty.
It really is.
Which brings us to the third and final business requirement. Abundance flows through the grid I have built.
Notice it doesn't say abundance flows through my physical exhaustion or abundance flows through my 80-hour work week. It flows through the grid.
That requirement reinforces the decoupling of presence and value. It demands that you trust the digital systems, the funnels, the automated programs you've put in place.
You have to trust the hammock.
Exactly. The sources also point out that making this transition is incredibly isolating if you try to do it alone.
I can imagine.
The text mentions a community called the Chillstar '08 Inner Circle. This is where people gather to discuss these exact internal CFO breakthroughs. Because when everyone else around you is running around acting like a combustion engine, it takes serious psychological courage to sit down quietly and be the architect.
It really does. It requires you to be comfortable with the quiet, which, let's face it, we are absolutely not used to.
Not at all.
And that brings the logic of these sources perfectly into focus. We started by diagnosing that manual labor virus, the deeply ingrained industrial conditioning that tells us we have to push the electric car to prove we deserve to drive it.
We learned how to catch that scarcity-driven internal CFO by running the sovereign audit on our Sunday pit dread.
Yeah, we have to constantly ask if the panic is real or just a withdrawal symptom from our addiction to the grind.
And then we explored the actual mechanics of the solution. We looked
Yeah.
at the Chillstar Creed, the structural reality of quiet mode, and the fact that true digital automation isn't a treadmill to make you run faster, it's a hammock.
It's about designing a digital blueprint, like the legacy builder programs, that can hold the financial weight so you can actually step into the sanctuary.
Yeah.
The ultimate message from this curriculum is that you do not have to bleed for every dollar. You are worthy of an abundance that flows with ease.
It is a profound unlearning process. But if you take these sources seriously, it leads to a truly fascinating question.
They share it.
If you actually do this, if you replace just one manual task this week, if you successfully build your digital grid and you truly accept on a cellular level that your physical presence isn't required to generate value,
Yeah.
how will you choose to spend all that brilliant creative energy you used to burn just acting as the engine?
Wow. Really picture that, the learner. You've stopped pushing the car. The engine is running perfectly on its own. The dashboard is clear of emergencies. You are sitting in the driver's seat with the entire day ahead of you, and for the first time in your adult life, you aren't completely exhausted. What do you build next? Until next time, keep diving.